I'm TJ, joined by Diana. This is the Congressional Times for Saturday, June 6, 2026.
Good to be here. We've got a pardon, a polling crater, and a Maine Senate race that is somehow getting more interesting by the hour.
Let's start with the pardon. President Trump has pardoned former Indiana Republican Congressman Stephen Buyer, who was convicted of insider trading back in 2023 and sentenced to 22 months in federal prison.
Buyer represented Indiana's 4th congressional district from 1993 to 2011. His conviction came out of the Southern District of New York, which is not a court known for going easy on anyone.
Right. The case involved trading on material non-public information, the classic insider trading fact pattern. This wasn't a paperwork violation or a gray area situation.
A jury convicted him, a federal judge sentenced him, and now a presidential pardon wipes the conviction from the books. That's how the process works, but it doesn't mean there are no questions worth asking.
And here's one of those questions. A pardon removes the federal conviction, but it does not erase the underlying court record. The filings, the evidence, the verdict, that's all still sitting in the SDNY docket.
So the paper trail exists. The pardon changes his legal status, not the historical record. For Buyer, personally, that's the difference between being in federal prison and being a free man. That's not a small thing.
It's not, but the broader question is what this says about how executive clemency is being applied to financial crimes. This isn't a border crossing case or a drug sentence with a mandatory minimum someone thought was disproportionate.
This is insider trading, a member of Congress using information he wasn't supposed to have to make money on the market. That's a pretty specific type of offense.
And it's the kind of thing that tends to erode public trust in institutions, which is already not exactly in great shape. When you pardon it, you're making a statement about how seriously you take that erosion.
The White House hasn't offered a detailed rationale, at least not one that's been widely reported, so we're left to read into it, which is never a great situation for the administration.
Buyer is a Republican who served in Congress for nearly 2 decades. There's a loyalty dimension here that's hard to ignore, but loyalty is not a legal standard for clemency.
No, and I think that's what makes this one sit differently than some of the other pardons we've seen. The clemency power is broad. Constitutionally, the president can do this. The question is whether doing it advances anything other than the relationship.
Worth watching whether there's any pushback from Republicans on this one, or whether it just gets absorbed into the news cycle and moves on.
My guess is the latter, but it's on the record now, and voters have a way of connecting dots when they have enough of them.
Speaking of voters, let's talk about where the president stands with them. The Economist polling tracker, which aggregates YouGov surveys, now puts Trump's job approval at 35%. Disapproval is at 60%. That's a net negative 25 points.
And that's not where it's been sitting for a while. That's a new low. Down another 1.1 points from the week before, according to the Washington Examiner's coverage of the tracker.
The primary driver cited is economic conditions, which makes sense. The Iran conflict has introduced a layer of uncertainty onto an economy that was already dealing with tariff-related turbulence.
When people feel economic anxiety, they tend to hold whoever is in charge responsible. That's not a partisan observation. That's just how approval ratings work across administrations.
And 35% is a number that starts to become structurally problematic. You can govern at 42 or even 40. At 35, you start losing the people who were giving you the benefit of the doubt.
The soft supporters, the people who didn't love every decision but were generally on board, those are the ones who tend to move at this stage. And once they move, they're harder to get back.
The midterm context matters here too. We are heading into a midterm election cycle. A president at negative 25 net approval is a weight on every Republican running in a competitive district or state.
Candidates in swing seats are going to have to decide how close they want to stand. That's a calculation that plays out in fundraising, in endorsements, in how many times you invite the president to your district.
And the Iran conflict is still an active variable. If it resolves in a way that looks like a win, those numbers could move. If it drags or escalates further, the economic pressure continues and approval likely follows it down.
I'd also note a 60% disapproval number means you've lost people well beyond the Democratic base. That's not just partisans disapproving. That's a broad coalition of people who are not satisfied right now.
Polling aggregates are more reliable than single polls, which is why trackers like this one are worth paying attention to. One poll can be an outlier. A consistent aggregate trend is a data point.
And this trend has been moving in one direction. That doesn't mean it's permanent, Approval ratings are not destiny, but it does mean the White House has real work to do on the economic messaging front.
All right, let's move to Maine, which has somehow become one of the more interesting Senate races in the country, and not for reasons anyone anticipated.
Graham Plattner, progressive oyster farmer, presumptive Democratic nominee to take on Susan Collins, and as of this week, the subject of allegations that Collins herself described as troubling.
That word choice matters. Collins didn't say serious, though troubling implies seriousness. She didn't prejudge anything, but she put a marker down, and she's the incumbent Republican senator whose seat is on the line.
And Plattner, for his part, came back to active campaigning on Friday, one day after the allegations emerged. So he's not withdrawing, he's not going quiet, he's pushing through.
Which is a choice. It can work. It can also look tone-deaf depending on what the allegations turn out to be. We should be clear, the specifics of the allegations are not fully detailed in what's been reported publicly yet.
Right? Collins described them as troubling. The Hill reported on that characterization, but we don't have the full picture of what's being alleged. And that matters. Not all allegations are equal.
What we do know is that on the Democratic side, there's a split developing. Sen. Brian Schatz came out with what was described as the first show of support for Plattner. That's notable because it signals at least one senator is willing to stand behind him.
But Janet Mills, the former Maine governor who would have been a formidable alternative candidate, is showing no signs of jumping back into the race. And that's significant because if Plattner becomes untenable, someone has to be ready to step in.
The primary hasn't happened yet. That's the key detail. This is still the primary phase. So Democratic voters in Maine are going to be making a decision about whether Plattner is the candidate they want to send into a general election against Collins.
And Collins is not a weak incumbent. She's survived races that look tough. She knows Maine. She knows how to run. If she gets to face a damaged candidate, that's a significant structural advantage.
The progressive base has been energized nationally, and Plattner is a progressive candidate. But enthusiasm in a primary and viability in a general are two different things, even before any allegations enter the picture.
Maine is genuinely competitive. Collins won in 2020 when a lot of people expected her to lose. It uses ranked choice voting, which adds another layer of complexity to how these races play out.
So you've got an incumbent who's battle-tested, a challenger who's now got allegations hanging over him, a potential alternative candidate who isn't moving, and a Democratic senator trying to shore up support before anyone else bails.
That's a lot of moving pieces for a race that hasn't even had its primary yet. The next few weeks are going to tell us a lot about whether Plattner can stabilize this or whether Democrats end up with a different nominee.
And Collins is watching all of it. She's not sitting back. She made a public statement. That's deliberate. She's framing this race early, and she's doing it while Plattner is at his most vulnerable.
Smart politics. You don't have to pile on. You just have to be on record saying what most people are already thinking. Collins has always been good at that kind of positioning.
We'll keep tracking Maine. It's going to be one of the marquee Senate races heading into November, and right now it has more uncertainty than almost any other seat on the map.
The oyster farmer might still pull through, but he's going to have to earn it.
That's the Congressional Times. Find us at thecongressionaltimes.com. And if you want the intelligence behind the headlines, the money trails, the lobbying filings, the data nobody else is pulling, check out Gabby at gab-e.com. That's gab-e.com.
Have a good Saturday. We'll be back with more. And something tells me Maine's not done surprising us.